August 1885. The Arizona Territory was a place where a secret could get you killed faster than a bullet. Sophia Boone thought the heat was her worst enemy until she saw a bundle moving in the dust at the edge of Dead Man's Canyon. She made a choice that day to save a life that didn't belong to her. But she didn't know that while she was saving a stranger, her own father was selling her out. That very night, the devil came to dinner, and Sophia was forced to choose: marry the monster who owned her father's debts, or reveal the forbidden secret hidden in her barn and start a war. This is the story of how one dusty afternoon changed history. The wind coming off the drag of the Mogollon Rim didn't just blow, it scoured. It felt like God himself was taking a piece of sandpaper to the earth, trying to rub out the sins of the Arizona Territory. Sophia Boone pulled her scarf tighter across her nose, narrowing her eyes against the grit. Her mare, a sturdy roan named Bess, huffed and pinned her ears back, unhappy with the pace. They were 3 miles from the Boone homestead, and the sky was turning the color of a bruised plum. A dust storm was brewing, a nasty one. "Steady, girl," Sophia murmured, her voice lost in the howling wind. "We'll be home before Silas starts breaking the furniture." She didn't call him father much anymore. Not since the whiskey took the man he used to be and left a hollow, nervous shell named Silas in his place. Sophia's eyes scanned the scrub brush and the red rocks. Survival out here meant noticing things that didn't fit: a broken branch, a circling buzzard, a footprint where the ground should be smooth. Today, it was a splash of color that didn't belong in the brown and gray palette of the desert. It was a vibrant, woven red, stuck in the crotch of a twisted mesquite bush near the lip of the ravine known as Dead Man's Gulch. Most folks in town, especially the terrified congregants of Reverend Miller's church, avoided the gulch. They said the spirits of the canyon tribes walked there. But Sophia was practical. Ghosts didn't scare her. Starvation did. And if that was a dropped saddlebag, it might have supplies. She steered Bess off the trail. As she neared the bush, the wind died down for a split second, a momentary gasp of silence in the storm. In that silence, she heard it. A cry. Thin, reedy, and desperate. Sophia was out of the saddle before Bess had fully stopped. She scrambled down the shallow slope, her boots skidding on loose shale. She reached the mesquite bush and froze. It wasn't a saddlebag. It was a basket, woven tight against the weather, lined with soft rabbit fur. And inside, wrapped in a blanket dyed with the distinct red clay and berry patterns of the local canyon tribe, the very people the U.S. cavalry was currently hunting north of the river, was a baby. The child couldn't have been more than 6 months old. His skin was hot to the touch, feverish, and his lips were cracked from dehydration. He had been hidden here, tucked deep into the bush to protect him from the sun, but he had been left long enough for the dust to settle in the folds of the blanket. "Oh, little one," Sophia whispered, her heart hammering against her ribs. She looked around wildly. "Where is she? Where is your mama?" The desert offered no answer, just the rising howl of the wind. Sophia knew the law of the land. If she rode into town with a tribal baby, the Indian agent, a cruel man named Thaddeus Holt, would take the child. The orphanages they sent these children to were graveyards, but if she left him, he would be dead by sundown. A crack of thunder shook the ground. The storm was landing. "I can't leave you," she said, her voice hardening. She scooped the basket up. The baby let out a weak wail, his dark eyes unfocused. She scrambled back up to Bess, securing the basket to the saddle horn, and wrapping her own heavy duster coat around it. "We ride fast, Bess. Don't you dare stumble." The ride back to the Boone Ranch was a blur of stinging sand and anxiety. Sophia wasn't just worried about the storm. She was worried about Silas. Her father blamed the natives for everything that had gone wrong in his life. The cattle rustling, the drought, the death of Sophia's mother. Though that had been smallpox, Silas preferred a target he could hate. If he saw this baby, he wouldn't see a child. He would see an enemy. They crested the final ridge as the first heavy drops of mud rain began to fall. The Boone Ranch lay below, a sad collection of gray timber buildings that had seen better decades. The barn leaned dangerously to the left, and the main house needed paint it would never get. Sophia guided Bess straight into the barn. The interior was dark, smelling of old hay and manure. She dismounted, her legs trembling from adrenaline. She worked quickly. She didn't take the baby to the house. Instead, she climbed the ladder to the hayloft, clearing a space behind a stack of winter feed bales. She created a nest, hidden from view from the floor below. "You stay quiet," she whispered, dribbling a little water from her canteen onto the baby's lips. He swallowed greedily, then whimpered, "Shh. You have to be a ghost, little one, just for tonight." She heard the heavy creak of the barn door opening below. "Sophia?" It was Silas, but his voice wasn't slurred. It was sharp, anxious. "Sophia, is that you? Why in God's name are you so late?" Sophia covered the basket with a loose burlap sack, leaving an air pocket, and scrambled down the ladder. "Storm caught me, Silas. I was checking the north fence." Silas Boone stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the gray light. He wasn't wearing his usual stained work shirt. He was wearing his suit, the black wool one he hadn't worn since her mother's funeral. He had shaved his beard, leaving his face looking pale and weak-chinned. "Leave the horse," Silas snapped, wringing his hands. "Get inside. You need to wash, scrub your hands, fix your hair." Sophia frowned, wiping dust from her forehead. "What's going on? Who died?" "Nobody died," Silas said, his eyes darting around the yard, as if he were being watched. "We have a guest coming for supper, a very important guest." Sophia felt a cold pit open in her stomach. They didn't have guests. They had debt collectors. "Who, Silas?" "Just get inside," he roared, a flash of his old temper sparking. "And put on your mother's blue dress, the silk one." Sophia stared at him. "That dress is for weddings and funerals." "Tonight," Silas said, his voice dropping to a terrified whisper. "It might be for saving our lives. Now move." Above them, in the loft, the baby remained silent. Sophia prayed the fever would keep him sleeping. She walked past her father, the smell of bay rum and fear radiating off him, and headed toward the house. She didn't know who was coming, but she knew one thing. Nothing good happened when Silas Boone put on his Sunday best on a Tuesday. The dining room table, usually cluttered with unpaid bills and empty whiskey bottles, was set with the good china. The cracks in the porcelain were turned downward, hidden from view. Silas had even roasted a chicken, though it was slightly burnt on one side. Sophia sat stiffly in the high-backed oak chair. The blue silk dress was tight across her shoulders. She was broader and stronger than her mother had been. Her hands, calloused from fixing fences and branding calves, looked out of place against the delicate fabric. The clock on the mantel ticked loudly. 7 p.m. "Stop fidgeting," Silas hissed. He was sweating profusely, dabbing his forehead with a handkerchief. "And smile. For the love of God, Sophia, try to look agreeable. You haven't told me who is coming, Father. A man of means, Silas said, pouring himself a glass of water, his hand shaking so bad he spilled half of it. A man who holds the paper on this ranch. The bank sold our mortgage last week, Sophia. I didn't tell you. Sophia gripped the table edge. Sold it? To who? The sound of hoofbeats outside answered her. It wasn't a single horse. It was a carriage, heavy and expensive, pulled by a team. The carriage stopped. Moments later, a heavy knock echoed through the house. Silas jumped as if he'd been shot. He's here. Stand up. Show respect. Sophia stood, her jaw set. She watched the door open. The man who entered blocked out the stormy twilight. He was tall, with shoulders that filled the doorframe, wearing a suit that cost more than the Boone Ranch made in 5 years. He removed a black Stetson to reveal silver-streaked hair and cold, predatory blue eyes. It was Gideon Thorne. Sophia's breath hitched. Gideon Thorne wasn't just a rancher. He was the land baron of the entire valley. He owned the water rights, the general store, and the sheriff. He was known for two things: his immense wealth and the rumor that he had beaten his first wife to death, though the coroner, on Thorne's payroll, had called it a fall down the stairs. Mr. Thorne, Silas bowed, practically scraping the floor. Welcome to our humble home. Thank you for coming through the storm. Thorne didn't look at Silas. His eyes locked instantly on Sophia. He looked at her the way a man looks at a horse at an auction, checking the teeth, the legs, the breeding. The storm is of no consequence, Thorne said, his voice a deep baritone that rumbled in the small room. He stepped forward, extending a gloved hand to Sophia. Miss Boone, you are striking, more so than your father described. Sophia didn't take the hand immediately. Silas kicked her shin under the table. She winced and offered her hand. Thorne didn't shake it. He held it, his thumb tracing the calluses on her palm. Working hands, Thorne murmured. I like capability in a woman. Please, sit, Silas urged, pulling out a chair. Dinner was a torture. Silas babbled about the weather, the potential for a good corn yield, and the strength of the Boone stock. Thorne said little, eating methodically, his eyes never leaving Sophia. Finally, Thorne pushed his plate away. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded document. He slapped it onto the table. The sound was like a gunshot. Let us dispense with the pleasantries, Silas, Thorne said. This is the deed to your land, and the promissory notes for your gambling debts at the saloon, totaling $4,000. Sophia gasped. 4,000? Silas, how? Silas looked down at his plate, his face crimson. Bad luck, Sophia. Just a run of bad luck. I am not a charity, Miss Boone, Thorne said, turning his chair to face her fully. I intend to foreclose. I will take the land, the cattle, and the house. You and your father will be on the street by morning. Please, Mr. Thorne, Silas whimpered. However, Thorne continued, raising a finger, I am in need of something money cannot easily buy. A legacy. My first wife failed to give me a son before her untimely passing. I need a wife who is young, strong, and of good pioneer stock, a woman who can survive this country and bear strong children. The room went silent. The ticking clock seemed to slow down. Sophia felt the blood drain from her face. What are you saying? I am proposing an arrangement, Thorne said coldly. You marry me, Sophia, within the month. In exchange, I forgive your father's debt completely. He keeps the ranch. He lives out his days here in comfort. You move to my estate, the Iron Ridge. Sophia looked at her father. She expected him to be outraged. She expected him to reach for the shotgun above the mantel. Instead, Silas looked up with tears in his eyes, tears of relief. "Sophia," he whispered, "it's a good offer. You'll be the richest woman in the territory. You'll never have to work again." "You're selling me," Sophia said, her voice trembling with rage. "Like a cow." "I am saving us," Silas shouted, standing up. "We have nothing. If you don't do this, we starve." Thorne leaned back, smiling comfortably. "The girl has spirit. I like that. It will need to be broken, of course, but it makes the prize more valuable." Sophia opened her mouth to scream, to tell them both to go to hell. But suddenly, a sound cut through the noise of the storm outside. It was faint, muffled by the thick timber walls and the distance to the barn, but to Sophia's ears, it was a siren, a cry. The baby was awake. Thorne's head snapped up. "What was that?" "Wind," Silas said quickly. "Just the wind in the eaves." Thorne narrowed his eyes. He was a hunter. He knew the difference between wind and a living thing. "That sounded like a child." "We have no children here," Silas said, forcing a laugh. "Just Sophia and me." Thorne stood up, walking slowly toward the window that overlooked the yard and the barn. "I have acute hearing, Silas, and I know there is a band of canyon tribes moving through the South Ridge. If you are harboring fugitives—" "No," Sophia interjected, standing up so fast her chair toppled over. "It's a goat, a kid goat. I found it injured in the storm and put it in the barn. It bleats like a baby." Thorne turned to look at her, his eyes searching her face for a lie. "A goat?" "Yes," Sophia lied, her nails digging into her palms. "I was tending to it before you arrived. That's why I was late." Thorne studied her for a long, agonizing moment. Then, a slow, cruel smile spread across his face. "I see. You have a tender heart. That is acceptable. For now." He walked back to the table and picked up his hat. "I will give you until tomorrow morning to decide, Sophia. But know this. If you say no, the sheriff will be here at noon to evict you. And if you say yes, well, then you belong to me." He walked to the door, then paused. "And Sophia, if I find out that goat is anything else, I will skin it myself." The door closed. The carriage rattled away. Sophia stood in the silence of the dining room, looking at her father. Silas slumped into his chair, pouring a glass of whiskey. "You'll do it," Silas muttered, not meeting her eyes. "You'll marry him, for this family." Sophia looked at the man who had raised her, seeing him clearly for the first time. "I'm going to the barn," she said quietly. "To check on the goat?" Silas sneered. "To check on my soul," Sophia replied, "since you seem to have lost yours." She grabbed the lantern and ran out into the rain. She had until morning to find a way out of a trap that had steel jaws on both sides. And in the hayloft, the baby was crying louder now, a sound that could bring death down upon them all. The barn was a cathedral of shadows. Sophia climbed the ladder to the loft, the lantern casting swinging, eerie light against the rafters. The rain hammered the tin roof like 1,000 drumsticks, a deafening noise that she hoped would mask the sounds of the child. She reached the nest behind the bales. The baby was awake now. His small face flushed a dark, unnatural red. He wasn't crying anymore. He was wheezing, a dry, rattling sound that terrified Sophia more than the wailing had. "You're burning up," she whispered, touching his forehead. It was like touching a stove. She unbuttoned her sleeve and tore a strip of cloth from her chemise, soaking it in the cool water of her canteen. She dabbed the baby's forehead. He leaned into the coolness, his tiny hand gripping her finger with surprising strength. "I need medicine," Sophia muttered to herself. "Willow bark tea, or the laudanum from Silas's cabinet." But she couldn't go back into the house. Silas was drinking himself into a stupor, and he was desperate. A desperate man was dangerous, even if he was her father. If he found the baby now, he would see it as a bargaining chip. He'd hand the child over to Thorne to sweeten the deal. A creak from the floorboards below froze her blood. It wasn't the wind. It was the distinct groan of the third plank from the door, the one that always bowed under the weight of a man. Sophia blew out the lantern instantly. The loft plunged into darkness, save for the flashes of lightning illuminating the gaps in the siding. "I know you're up there, Sophia." The voice was gravel and smoke. It wasn't Silas, and it wasn't Thorne. It was Caleb Vance. Sophia's hand went to the knife she kept in her boot. Caleb Vance was Thorne's foreman, his fixer, a man who tracked runaways and broke the legs of farmers who didn't pay their protection money. He was a ghost story told around campfires, a man who was said to be able to track a lizard across a rock. "Go away, Caleb," Sophia called out, her voice steady despite the trembling of her hands. "I'm tending to a sick animal. I don't need help." "Thorne left me to watch the place," Caleb said. His boots crunched on the hay as he walked toward the ladder. "He thinks you might bolt. He wants to protect his investment. I'm not an investment, and I'm not running." "Then you won't mind if I come up and see this goat?" Sophia scrambled, pulling the burlap sack over the basket again, leaving just a small gap for air. She stood up, blocking the view of the nest, the knife gripped tight in her hand behind her back. Caleb's head rose above the loft floor. A flash of lightning lit up his face. He was younger than Thorne, maybe 30, with a scar running through his left eyebrow and down his cheek, a souvenir from a knife fight in Tombstone. He wore a duster coat stained with trail dust and carried a Winchester rifle slung casually over his shoulder. He climbed up and stood to his full height. He looked at Sophia, then at the knife she was failing to hide, and finally at the pile of hay behind her. "You're a terrible liar, Sophia," Caleb said softly. "Always have been, even when we were kids." "I haven't been a kid in a long time, Caleb. Neither have you." Caleb took a step forward. "Move aside." "No." "Sophia, if I have to move you, you'll get hurt. I don't want that." "Then turn around and leave." Caleb sighed, a sound of genuine fatigue. He moved with a speed that belied his size. Before Sophia could slash with the knife, he caught her wrist. He didn't twist it. He just held it firm, immobilizing her. With his other hand, he gently pushed her aside. He walked to the bales and lifted the burlap sack. Sophia held her breath, waiting for the inevitable. She waited for him to shout, to drag her down, to ride for Thorne. Caleb stared down at the baby. The child let out a soft, pained whimper. Caleb didn't recoil. He didn't sneer. He froze. He leaned in closer, squinting in the gloom. He reached out a gloved finger and touched the woven pattern on the blanket, the red clay-jagged lines. "Hopi?" Caleb whispered, more to himself than her. "No. Closer. Yavapai." He straightened up, his face unreadable. He looked at Sophia. "Where did you find him?" "Dead Man's Gulch," Sophia said, rubbing her wrist. "In the mesquite." "The cavalry pushed a band through there 2 days ago," Caleb said, his voice low. "General Crook's men. They were moving fast. The mother must have hidden him, hoping to come back." "She's not coming back," Sophia said. "Not with this storm." Not with the soldiers. Caleb looked back at the baby. If Thorne sees this, he'll kill it. He hates the tribes more than he loves money. His brother was killed in the Apache Wars. I know, Sophia said. That's why I have to leave. Tonight. Caleb looked at her, his dark eyes assessing. You can't leave. The roads are washed out. And Thorne has men posted at the bridge and the pass. You're boxed in, Sophia. I can't marry him, Caleb, and I can't let this baby die. Caleb was silent for a long moment. The rain intensified, drumming against the roof. He looked at the baby, then back at Sophia. He reached into his duster pocket. Sophia flinched, expecting a weapon. Instead, Caleb pulled out a small silver flask and a pouch of dried herbs. My mother was part Creek, Caleb said, his voice barely audible. She taught me things before she died. He crouched down by the basket. Get me water, clean water, and a spoon. Sophia stared at him, stunned. Why are you helping me? Caleb looked up, and for the first time, the hardness in his eyes cracked. Because Thorne owns my debt too, Sophia. He owns all of us, but he doesn't own this. He gestured to the child. Now move. We have to break this fever before dawn. The hours between midnight and dawn were a blur of tension. Caleb and Sophia worked in a strange, silent rhythm. Caleb mixed a paste from the herbs and water, forcing it between the baby's cracked lips. Sophia kept cool compresses on the child's chest. By 3 a.m., the wheezing had softened. The baby's skin was no longer burning to the touch. He was sleeping peacefully. Caleb sat back against a hay bale, wiping sweat from his brow. He's strong. He'll live, if the white men don't get him. Thank you, Sophia said. She was sitting opposite him, exhausted. I didn't know about your mother. Not something I advertise in this territory, Caleb said dryly. He checked his pocket watch. It's getting light soon. Thorne will be here at 80 with the preacher. I need a horse, Sophia said. Bess is tired, but she can make it. Make it where? Caleb shook his head. Thorne will have trackers on you in an hour. I'm good, Sophia, but I'm not the only one on his payroll. There's a man named Ezra Colt working the south perimeter. He's meaner than a rattlesnake and half as loud. If he catches you... So what do I do? Sophia demanded. Sit here and wait for the wedding? No. Caleb stood up. You go, but not on a horse. You take the buckboard wagon. Hide the baby under the false bottom, the one your father used for smuggling whiskey. Sophia's eyes widened. I forgot about that. I didn't, Caleb said. I'll ride escort. I'll tell Thorne I'm taking you into town to buy a wedding dress. It'll buy us time to get to the train station in Flagstaff. You'd do that? You'd turn on Thorne? I'm done with Thorne, Caleb spat. I'm done doing the devil's dirty work. They quickly formulated a plan. Caleb would hitch the wagon. Sophia would pack a bag. Sophia left the barn, running through the thinning rain toward the house. The windows were dark. She hoped Silas had passed out. She slipped into the kitchen. It smelled of stale smoke and whiskey. She moved silently to her room, grabbing a heavy satchel. She packed 2 dresses, her mother's Bible, a small bag of coins she had hidden in a coffee tin, and the revolver from her nightstand. She was halfway back to the kitchen when the lamp flared to life. Going somewhere? Sophia froze. Silas was sitting in the rocking chair in the corner, the shotgun across his lap. He looked sober, terrifyingly sober. I'm leaving, Father, Sophia said, keeping her voice calm. I'm not marrying Thorne. You ungrateful wretch. Silas stood up, the shotgun swaying slightly. I gave you life. I fed you. And when the time comes for you to pay me back, you run. He's a monster, Silas. He killed his wife. He's a rich man, Silas roared, and he's forgiving the debt. Do you know what happens if you leave? He throws me in debtor's prison, or worse. Come with me, Sophia pleaded. We can go to California. We can start over. With what money? Silas sneered. Then his eyes narrowed. And what were you doing in the barn all night? With Caleb Vance? Nothing, Sophia lied. I saw the lights. Silas stepped closer, and I heard sounds. He moved past her, toward the back door. I think I'll go see what my daughter is hiding. No! Sophia lunged, grabbing his arm. Silas was weak, but desperation gave him strength. He shoved her back. She hit the kitchen table hard, knocking a ceramic bowl to the floor. It shattered. Silas threw the door open and marched into the yard. Vance, what do you have out there? Sophia scrambled up, ignoring the pain in her hip. She ran after him. In the yard, the dawn was breaking, painting the sky a bloody purple. Caleb had just pulled the wagon out of the barn. The baby was already hidden. Silas raised the shotgun, pointing it at Caleb. Step away from the wagon, Vance. I want to see what's in it. Put the gun down, Silas, Caleb said calmly, his hands raised, nowhere near his rifle. You're drunk. I'm protecting my future, Silas yelled. He looked back at Sophia. Is it money? Did you steal my whiskey money? It's a baby, Silas, Sophia screamed, realizing there was no point in lying. I found a baby in the canyon, a native baby. Silas froze. The color drained from his face, replaced by a look of pure revulsion. You brought a savage into my house? With Thorne coming? He's an innocent child. He's a death sentence. Silas cocked the hammer of the shotgun. If Thorne finds out, he burns us all. I have to get rid of it. He turned the gun toward the wagon. Don't! Sophia shrieked. She didn't think. She didn't hesitate. She raised the revolver she had taken from her room and fired. The shot was deafening in the morning air. She missed Silas, but the bullet struck the wooden post of the porch right next to his head. Splinters exploded into his face. Silas screamed, dropping the shotgun and clutching his face. He wasn't badly hurt, just cut and shocked, but he fell to his knees. Go, Sophia yelled to Caleb. She sprinted for the wagon, leaping onto the bench seat. Caleb didn't wait. He cracked the reins. Here! The horses surged forward. The wagon lurched, mud spinning from the wheels. Sophia! Silas screamed from the mud, blood trickling down his cheek. You're dead to me. You hear me? I have no daughter. Sophia didn't look back. She gripped the side of the wagon as they thundered out of the yard, past the broken gate, and onto the road to Flagstaff. But as they crested the first hill, Caleb cursed. Look! Sophia looked south. On the horizon, silhouetted against the rising sun, was a dust cloud, a large one. Riders, moving fast. Thorne is early, Caleb said grimly. He reached down and grabbed his Winchester, and he brought the whole damn payroll. The chase was on. The wagon bounced violently as Caleb whipped the horses off the main road and onto a deer trail that cut through the scrub brush. The dust cloud behind them was closing in, a relentless, choking fog filled with the thunder of hooves. Hold him tight, Caleb roared over the wind. This gets rough. Sophia sat on the floorboards of the wagon, wedged between the seat and a crate of tools, her body curled around the baby. The child was awake, eyes wide and terrified, reacting to the chaotic motion. They're gaining, Caleb, Sophia shouted, peering over the tailgate. She could see individual riders now, 6 of them, men in long dusters with rifles drawn, and leading them, riding a massive black stallion, was Ezra Colt. Ezra was a man who killed for sport. He wore a patch over one eye, lost to a hawk he'd tried to capture as a boy, and he carried a Sharps buffalo rifle, a gun designed to kill from a mile away. Crack. A bullet splintered the wood of the tailgate inches from Sophia's head. She screamed, ducking lower. "He's got the range," Caleb yelled. "Grab the reins." "What?" "Grab them. I can't shoot and drive." Sophia scrambled up, her heart hammering against her ribs. She took the thick leather reins, her hands slick with sweat. Caleb grabbed his Winchester and spun around in the seat, facing backward. "Keep them steady. Aim for the gap in the rocks. The Devil's Throat." The Devil's Throat was a natural bottleneck, a narrow pass between two towering sandstone pillars where the trail narrowed to barely the width of a wagon. If they could make it through, the riders would have to file in single file, neutralizing their numbers. Sophia snapped the reins. "Hi-yah!" The horses, panicked by the gunfire, surged forward. The wagon careened on two wheels as they hit a patch of loose shale. Sophia fought the weight, her muscles burning. Behind them, Caleb took a breath, steadying himself against the violent swaying of the wagon. He waited. Ezra Colt raised his rifle again. Caleb fired first. The shot went wide, kicking up dirt in front of Ezra's horse. The stallion reared, breaking Ezra's aim. His shot flew wild into the sky. "Missed him!" Caleb cursed, cycling the lever of his rifle. "They're spreading out, 2 on the left flank." 2 riders broke away from the pack, trying to circle around to cut off the wagon before the pass. "Sophia, faster!" "I'm trying." They were 200 yards from the pass. The riders on the left were closing in, their pistols drawn. One of them, a man Sophia recognized as the town drunk turned hired gun, leveled his pistol at the lead horse. "No!" Sophia screamed. She didn't think. She just reacted. She lashed out with the whip, not at her own horses, but cracking it in the air toward the rider. The sound was like a gunshot. The rider's horse flinched, stumbling sideways into a patch of cactus. The horse bucked, throwing the rider hard into the dirt. "Nice aim!" Caleb yelled, firing 2 quick shots at the second flanker. One bullet struck the man's shoulder, spinning him out of the saddle. They hit the entrance to the Devil's Throat. The walls of red rock rose up on either side, blocking out the sun. The temperature dropped instantly. The wagon scraped against the stone, sparks flying, the wood screeching in protest. "We made it," Sophia gasped. "Not yet." Caleb grabbed the reins back from her. "Hold on." They burst out the other side of the pass, but the trail ended abruptly. Ahead lay the Rio Verde, swollen from the storm. The bridge, a rickety wooden structure, was washed out in the center. Caleb slammed on the brakes. The horses screamed, skidding in the mud, stopping just feet from the rushing water. "Dead end," Caleb whispered, looking at the raging river. He looked back at the narrow pass. The thunder of hooves echoed against the canyon walls. Ezra Colt and the remaining 3 men were coming through. And behind them, Sophia knew, Gideon Thorne wouldn't be far. "We can't cross," Sophia said, her voice trembling. "And we can't go back." Caleb jumped down, grabbing the baby from the wagon bed. He looked at the cliffs above them. "We climb. There's an old mining trail up the ridge. The wagon stays." "Leave the supplies," Sophia said, grabbing the satchel and the canteen. "Just the baby." They scrambled up the rocky slope, just as Ezra Colt burst through the pass. Ezra saw the abandoned wagon and pulled his horse up, smiling. He didn't see them in the rocks above. "Fan out!" Ezra shouted to his men. "They're on foot. Find them. Thorne wants the girl alive. Kill the man, and bring me the bundle." Sophia and Caleb pressed themselves flat against a ledge 50 feet up, hidden by a cluster of juniper bushes. Sophia clamped her hand over the baby's mouth as he began to stir, praying to a God she hadn't spoken to in years that the child would stay silent. Night fell over the canyon like a heavy shroud. The temperature plummeted, the high desert cold biting through Sophia's thin dress. They had climbed higher, finding shelter in a shallow cave that had once been a prospector's claim. It smelled of bat guano and dry earth, but it was defensible. From the mouth of the cave, they could see the fires of Thorne's camp down by the river. Caleb sat near the entrance, cleaning his rifle in the dark. Sophia was in the back, rocking the baby, who was finally drinking a little water mixed with crushed hardtack. "Why?" Sophia broke the silence. "Why go to this much trouble for a baby? Thorne is a greedy man, but this feels like a war." Caleb stopped cleaning the gun. He turned to look at her, his face illuminated by the faint moonlight. "Hand me the blanket, the one the boy was wrapped in." Sophia unwrapped the sleeping child and handed the heavy woven cloth to Caleb. Caleb held it up to the moonlight, tracing the pattern with his thumb. "I noticed it back in the barn, but I wasn't sure until I saw the stitching in the sunlight today." He pointed to a symbol woven into the corner, a stylized black hawk with a red sun in its talons. "This isn't just a tribal pattern," Caleb said gravely. "This is the crest of Chief Tana." Sophia gasped. "The peacemaker?" Chief Tana was a legend in the territory. While Geronimo and the Apache were fighting a bloody war, Tana, a leader of the Yavapai Apache band, had been negotiating a peace treaty with General Crook. He was the only thing keeping the entire Central Territory from burning to the ground. Rumor was Tana's wife died in childbirth a few months ago, Caleb said, and the baby went missing during a raid by rogue soldiers on Thorne's payroll. Thorne stole the baby? No, Caleb shook his head. Thorne paid men to cause chaos. The mother likely fled and died hiding him. But if Thorne gets this baby, he won't return him to Tana. He'll kill him, Sophia realized, horror washing over her. Worse, Caleb said. He'll leave the body where Tana's scouts can find it, with U.S. Army bullets in it. Sophia felt sick. He wants to start a war. Exactly. If Tana thinks the army killed his son, he tears up the treaty. He attacks the settlements. The army comes in full force, wipes the tribe out, and moves the survivors to the San Carlos reservation. And the land? The land becomes open range, Caleb finished. Thorne has had geologists up in those hills for months. There's copper, Sophia, mountains of it, worth 10 times what the cattle are worth, but he can't mine it while it's treaty land. Sophia looked down at the sleeping baby. He wasn't just an orphan. He was the linchpin of the entire territory. His life meant peace. His death meant slaughter. We can't just run to Flagstaff, Sophia said, her voice hardening. If we leave, Thorne will just find another way to start the war. We have to get him to Tana. Tana is camped 20 miles north, Caleb said, through the Badlands, and Thorne is between us and him. Then we go through Thorne. Sophia, that's suicide. No, she said, standing up. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. She was a daughter of the frontier, raised on grit and survival. Thorne thinks we're prey. He thinks we're a scared girl and a traitor running for our lives. He's not expecting us to fight back. And how do we do that? I have 12 bullets left. You have 5. We don't use bullets, Sophia said, walking to the edge of the cave and looking down at the campfires below. We use the canyon. My father used to work these mines before he turned to the bottle. He told me about the ventilation shafts, the ones that run under the riverbed. Caleb stood up, intrigued. And, Sophia pointed to a dark patch on the canyon floor, near where Thorne's men had set up their picket line. That picket line is sitting right on top of the old sulfur vent. If we can trigger a collapse or a scare, we flush them out, Caleb smiled, a slow, dangerous smile. Create confusion. In the chaos, we steal fresh horses. Not just horses, Sophia said. We take Thorne. Caleb stared at her. You want to kidnap the most powerful man in Arizona? If we have Thorne, Sophia said, Ezra won't shoot, and we can ride right into Tana's camp with a hostage. It was madness. It was impossible, and it was their only chance. You're crazier than your father, Caleb said, holstering his gun. I like it. One problem, Sophia said, looking back at the baby. We can't take the baby down there during the fight. I'll hide him, Caleb said, deep in the shaft. He'll be safe for an hour. But if we don't come back, we come back, Sophia promised. She touched the handle of her revolver. Or we die trying. Let's go meet the devil. They began the descent in the dark, moving not as fugitives, but as hunters, sliding silently toward the camp, where Gideon Thorne sat drinking coffee, unaware that the girl he tried to buy was coming to take his life. The descent into the canyon floor was a nightmare of loose shale and silent prayers. Sophia moved like a shadow, her breathing shallow. Ahead, the campfires of Gideon Thorne's men flickered like calm stars in a hellish sky. They reached the perimeter. The smell of frying bacon and coffee wafted through the air, a stark contrast to the violence hanging over them. The vent is there, Sophia whispered, pointing to a cluster of rocks near the picket line where the horses were tied. A faint, rotten egg smell of sulfur lingered there, the breath of the old mine. Caleb nodded. He handed her a lucifer match. Wait for my signal. I'll take the guard. You light the vent. The gas buildup isn't enough to kill, but it'll flare like dragon's breath and spook the horses to kingdom come. Caleb vanished into the dark. Sophia counted to 10, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She watched a guard patrolling near the horses. Suddenly a hand reached out from the darkness, pulled him into the brush, and silenced him. That was the signal. Sophia struck the match on a rock. The flame flared blue. She tossed it into the fissure of the vent. Whoosh! A pillar of blue and orange flame erupted from the ground, accompanied by a low, mournful moan as the air pressure shifted. The effect was instantaneous chaos. The horses, already skittish, screamed and tore their picket ropes. They stampeded directly through the camp, trampling tents and supplies. Fire! Ambush! Screams erupted. Men scrambled from their bedrolls, firing blindly into the dark. In the confusion, Caleb didn't run away. He ran toward the center tent, the command tent. Sophia sprinted back to the mine shaft where they had hidden the baby, scooped him up, and ran to meet Caleb. She reached the command tent just as Caleb kicked the canvas flap open. Inside, Gideon Thorne was standing in his nightshirt, struggling to shove a pistol into his belt. He looked up, his face twisting from confusion to shock. You, Thorne snarled. Caleb didn't speak. He pistol-whipped Thorne across the jaw. The land baron crumpled. Get him up! Sophia hissed, bursting in. Ezra will figure it out in seconds. Caleb hauled a groggy, bleeding Thorne to his feet, jamming the barrel of his Winchester under Thorne's chin. Walk, Gideon. You're our shield. They dragged Thorne out into the chaos. Ezra Colt was shouting orders, trying to rally the men. He spotted them. Hold fire, Ezra screamed, seeing his boss held at gunpoint. Get the horses, Caleb yelled at Sophia. Sophia grabbed the reins of Thorne's massive black stallion and a roan mare that had been saddled for the morning watch. She mounted the mare, clutching the baby to her chest with one arm. Caleb shoved Thorne onto the stallion, tying his hands to the saddle horn in a blur of motion, then swung up behind him. Follow us and he dies, Caleb shouted. He kicked the stallion. They thundered out of the camp, leaving a trail of confusion and dust. They won't stop, Caleb yelled over the wind as they hit the open valley floor. Ezra doesn't care about Thorne's life as much as he cares about the money. If he thinks Thorne is a liability, he'll shoot us all. They rode hard for 2 hours, the landscape shifting from red rock to the high pine forests of the Mogollon Rim. The sun began to crest, painting the world in blood-red light. There, Sophia pointed. Ahead lay Painted Rock, a massive natural amphitheater where the Yavapai Apache were camped. Smoke rose from 100 fires, but between them and the camp, the ground exploded. Crack! A bullet whizzed past Sophia's ear. She looked back. Ezra Colt was there, flanking them with 3 riders. He had closed the gap. He wasn't trying to save Thorne. He was trying to silence the witnesses. Ride for the tree line, Caleb shouted. They pushed the horses to their breaking point. Another shot hit the ground near the stallion's hooves. Thorne screamed in terror. They burst through the tree line and into the clearing of Painted Rock. Sophia expected sanctuary. Instead, she found a wall of weapons. 50 warriors, painted for war, rose from the grass. Bows were drawn. Rifles were leveled. At the center stood a man who radiated power, Chief Tana. He wore a simple buckskin shirt, but his presence was more regal than any king. Caleb pulled the horses to a sliding halt. He kicked Thorne off the saddle. The land baron hit the dirt with a thud. Don't shoot! Caleb raised his hands. We come to parley. The warriors didn't lower their weapons. Tana stepped forward, his face a mask of grief and rage. He looked at the white men, then at Sophia. You bring the devil to my doorstep, Tana said in perfect English. And you expect to live? Behind them, Ezra Colt and his men burst into the clearing. They saw the army of warriors and skid to a halt, their faces turning pale. They were trapped. Chief Tana, Ezra shouted, trying to spin the narrative. These thieves kidnapped Mr. Thorne. We are here to rescue him and return to our land. Thorne scrambled to his knees. Yes, yes, they are criminals. Kill them. Tana looked at Sophia. He looked at the bundle in her arms. Sophia dismounted. Her legs shook, but she walked forward. She ignored the arrows pointed at her heart. She walked until she was 5 feet from the chief. I am Sophia Boone, she said, her voice ringing clear in the mountain air. And I am no thief. She pulled back the blanket. A collective gasp went through the warriors. Tana froze. The grief on his face shattered, replaced by a look of disbelief. The baby, sensing the stillness, let out a soft coo. My son, Tana whispered. He reached out, his hands trembling, and took the child from Sophia. He held the boy up to the sky, then pulled him close to his chest, burying his face in the blanket. When Tana looked up, there were tears in his eyes, but when he looked at Thorne and Ezra, the tears were gone. In their place was cold, ancient judgment. You told me, Tana said to Thorne, his voice low and dangerous, "that the soldiers killed him. You tried to make me burn the settlements." I didn't know," Thorne stammered. "It was a mistake." "He tried to sell the land," Caleb spoke up, stepping forward. "He needed a war to break the treaty so he could mine the copper. He left your son to die in the dust to start it." Tana looked at Ezra Colt. "And you?" Ezra went for his gun. He never cleared the holster. 3 arrows struck him in the chest simultaneously. He fell backward off his horse, dead before he hit the ground. The other 3 riders threw down their guns, raising their hands in surrender. Thorne began to weep, crawling toward Tana. "Mercy, I can pay you. I have gold." Tana looked at Sophia. "You saved the blood of my blood. The debt is life for life." He gestured to Thorne. "This man is yours to judge, daughter of the storm." Sophia looked at Gideon Thorne, the man who had terrified her father, who had tried to buy her like cattle, who had been willing to murder an infant for profit. "I don't want his life," Sophia said. "I want his name." She turned to the warriors. "Take him to the sheriff in Prescott, but send a dozen of your men with him. Tell the sheriff the whole territory is watching. If he walks free, the treaty breaks." Tana nodded. "It shall be done." The Boone Ranch was quiet, but it wasn't decaying anymore. The barn had been repaired. The fence line was straight. Sophia stood on the porch, watching the sunset. She wasn't wearing the blue silk dress. She was wearing work leathers, a badge pinned to her vest. Silas was gone. He had sold his share of the ranch to her for a bottle of whiskey and a train ticket to California. He hadn't looked back. A rider approached from the north. It was Caleb. He looked cleaner now, the weight of the debt gone from his shoulders. He worked for the governor now, acting as a liaison between the territory and the tribes. "Sheriff Boone?" Caleb smiled, tipping his hat. "Deputy Vance?" Sophia smirked. "You're late for supper." "Had to stop by the reservation," Caleb said. He pulled a small, intricately carved wooden horse from his saddlebag. "Tana sends his regards. And the little one, he's walking." Sophia took the wooden horse, her fingers brushing Caleb's. "We stopped a war, Caleb." "No." Caleb looked out at the vast, wild horizon, at the land that was finally, truly peaceful. "We just started a new story." Sophia smiled, turning back to the house where the aroma of fresh bread and a future she had chosen for herself was waiting. Sophia Boone didn't just save a child that day. She saved the soul of the frontier. In a world ruled by greed and guns, she proved that the bravest thing you can do isn't to take a life, but to save one. Gideon Thorne died in prison, a broken man, while the peace treaty Sophia fought for lasted another 20 years. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. It helps us bring more forgotten legends to life. What would you have done in Sophia's shoes? Would you have risked everything or saved yourself? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a journey into the Wild West. Thanks for watching.